let's take a look at the joint statement first. The joint statement of the two-day G7 summit covered both global and regional issues, but some say that while the span of topics was wide, the statement really lacking concrete solutions. What do you make of the results of this? Let me start with Professor Yuan first.
I think the outcome of the G7 summit in Japan seems not that successful. I think several reasons. First of all, I think those top 7 countries, they themselves have some differences in thinking about the situation of today's world economy. For example, Japanese still think now still in the crisis period, while the the European and the American disagree. So without the common understanding of the situation, how they can find the right solution. And secondly, I think most of countries has a different considerations. For example, Great Britain now is debating on the exit of the EU, and France is struggling on the street, rebelling of the government, and I think Germany is reluctant to be a real leader of the EU economy. Where the States is go beyond the crisis first, is in the recovery period, where Japanese now focus too much on something else of the economy, focus too much on the security arena. So given these differences, I think it's very hard for them to find the right solution of the world economy.
Mr. Wye, your thoughts on this? What do you make of what just said? Your assessment about the results coming out from the two-day summit?
I think we would be expecting too much to expect the leaders to find the solutions to all the world's problems in 2 days of meetings. I mean, these G7 meetings are a regular occurrence. What the leaders did was underline their appreciation that of the global economic problems facing us, and their determination jointly to deal with them. Now, of course, the various countries concerned have slightly different views on the priorities, based largely on their own economic and political circumstances. So it was difficult to get a completely unanimous declaration, but the really important thing, I think, is the realization and the commitment by the leaders to global economic development.
Professor Watanabe.
Yes, this G7 is just the performance show for the outer world of Japan. Mr. Abe, Prime Minister of Japan, visited European countries before this G7 meeting: Britain, France, Italy, and Germany. Then he went to Russia to see Mr. Putin to exchange ideas of the territorial issues and the security issues. This means that before the G7 meeting, everything has been agreed what kind of the things should be written in the communique, and also Mr. Abe met several times in the close contacts with Mr. Barack Obama. So the result of the G7 meeting were already known. The key factor is for them all is that they have the channel to have the direct talks. So this is very natural that we don't have the concrete result from the G7 meeting. In that sense, G20 would be more fruitful if it is organized well, prepared.
Now, what do you make of the fact that, Professor Yuan first, that leaders are quite divided on key economic issues, especially on how to stimulate economic growth? I mean, Shinzo Abe repeatedly keep referring to the conditions in 2008, saying that we're facing another financial global crisis. Professor Yuan, your thoughts on political leaders' division on key economic issues?
Yes. I think the political leaders in the G7, the problem is that different leaders have different political consideration today. Actually, after they kick off Russia in 2014, now the G7 back to the original G7. But the G7 today is not the old G7 already, because of European countries now suffering from the terrorism issue and the refugee issues. And the Emeritus is working hard to consultate of all the major powers, as our Japanese friend just mentioned. But it's very hard for Japan to hold the major responsibility of the recovery of the world economy, while the United States, because of already go beyond the crisis recovery, now the driving force of the states is not that robust than 80 years before. So those combination of old clubs of rich countries cannot fully achieve some consensus, let alone that these 7 countries cannot represent the whole economy in the world, because of today it's a multipolar world. And in terms of this, I think the September G20 in China is more expectable.
Professor Watanabe, I want to get your take on this. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe compared today's economic conditions with that of 2008, but many find this comparison implausible. What do you think?
Yeah, Prime Minister Abe has been appealing to the world, including, of course, domestically. He has 3 secret arrows for the economic development of Japan. And he tried to apply or appeal these 3 to the G7 leading nations. However, it means actually the failure of the Abe-no economics. This is very clear even in the media of Japan. So Mr. Abe is preparing only for the domestic purpose of election victory in the coming July. So the people in Japan are not expecting so much for the G7 itself, but more the people are very happy to have Mr. Barack Obama went to Hiroshima and promised to the people of Japan never, nuclear wars.
Okay, I want to read this to our viewers and to all of you. Founded in the 1970s, the G7 once played a significant role in solving the world economy, but things are different now. Their total GDP now makes up only 47% of the world economy, much lower than the 68% in 1992. Many think G20 has a broader representation and greater influence, and have raised questions about whether the G7 is as important as before. So my question is to you, Professor Wye, Mr. Wye, what role do you think that the G7 is now playing, especially when compared with other mechanisms like the G20?
I mean, it is perfectly clear that the combined economic strength of the countries of the G7 is not what it was. And if you compare that directly to the combined economic strength of the G20, then the combined economic strength of the G20 is greater. But I think it's a bit of a mistake to try and sort of set these 2 institutions against each other. I think it would be better to see them as reinforcing each other insofar as they can. The focus of the G7 meeting was on finding ways to improve and promote the world economy. Well, it's not an easy ask, and they haven't come up with resounding answers. But so too the G20 will be challenged to find unanimity on the best approaches to developing the world economy. But if the 2 institutions can work together in some way and reinforce the efforts that they're being made by both of them, I think we have a better chance of finding ways to deal with the economic problems that the world faces than by setting institutions against each other.
And what do you think of the UK referendum? I mean, some of the members of the G7 obviously face more problem than other members at home, Mr. Wye. The G7 members did not appear to talk about a Plan B response if the Britain leaves the EU. But the general consensus is that they will have consequences if Britain leaves the EU.
Yes, and that much was said, that the G7 leaders were worried about the potential consequences of a British exit from the EU. There is the problem is that there would be a huge amount of uncertainty were Britain to choose that path, and world leaders have responded to that by saying that in their view they think that it would be better for Britain not to go down that path. But the choice, of course, remains with the British people, and the reaction in Britain to these kind of remarks will be very mixed.
And Japan is not shying away from touching on hot-button issues and is rallying support when he talks about island disputes in South China Sea and East China Sea. Professor Yuan, this is not received very well here in China.
Of course, because we think today the world economy is worrisome for everybody in the world, and the G7 as a club of rich countries should be very responsible to dealing in this most urgent issue for everybody in the world. But the problem is that they spend lots of time on some other issues else of the world economy, for example, East China Sea and South China Sea. I think it's something irresponsible. It's a waste of time on those irrelevant issues for most of the countries. Actually, this finds several countries is a selfish interest is kidnap the whole club into the wrong direction. In terms of this, I think China feel unhappy. So we think maybe today the most urgent thing is the recovery of the economy. And the G7, and the origin of the G7 is for the global economic governance. That is the real function of the G7. But today, I think G7 should be back to its original function rather than just focus too much on other issues, including some security issues.
Professor Watanabe, your response to what's been said?
Yeah, for Prime Minister Abe, this G7 was not successful because he wanted to revise the Constitution of Japan, especially Article 9 Peace Clause. So he wanted to put the emphasis on the attacks or critical attitude on the South China Sea issues. However, European nations did not agree to him. And also, Mr. Obama is now a half lame duck. Then they wanted to talk more about the security issues between the United States and Japan, but it was not successful. So for many ways, Mr. Abe was not successful in promotion of the world economy in the sense of the development of the world. This was not, you see, possible without the cooperation of the developing nations led by China.